The meeting is being recorded starting now.
Okay, just confirming that I see Will, I see Luke, I see other esteemed members of the town, and those interested, I see you, Paula. Wonderful. Okay, just bear with me one moment. We're recording. So I call this meeting to order of the Town of Fairfield's FairTV Commission. This is Wednesday, August 30th at just after 8 p.m. Thank you all for joining this meeting. We'll go through some housekeeping items as we always do first, and then get into some more discussion, if you will, on pertinent matters. Bear with me, folks, just one more moment. Okay, as opening remarks go, I'm David Kraft, the chairman of the FairTV Commission. I don't really have many opening remarks for tonight's meeting. I would just like to add / clarify that this is considered a special meeting tonight because we had to postpone or cancel the regularly scheduled meeting due to a lack of quorum a couple of weeks ago. This was the first time since the beginning of this year, or as long as I can remember actually, that we had to make such a postponement due to a quorum issue. I think as some of you know, we are a committee currently of 4 as we eagerly await a 5th. We were for a good period of time a committee of 3. Now we're moving in the right direction with the addition of Lee Camlett, who's been a wonderful addition to Paula and Will. We're both on, and so we did not have a quorum, but I'd like to say officially on the record and for everybody's benefit here that this is not an issue for the FairTV Commission. We are dedicated to having our meetings at the scheduled time. It is summertime and people do take summer vacation, particularly in the months of August, and that had impact on our ability to form a quorum. And as you all know, we are volunteers and doing the best we can to manage both our lives and the FairTV Commission, and hopefully having those two things play ball. But we have a quorum tonight, and I expect we will continue to have one as we've done in the past. So that's my opening remark, if you will. At this point, I'll hand it over to Paula for her vice chairperson remarks.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I don't have any remarks this evening. So I guess we pass it on to Will, the secretary's report.
All right, thank you. First thing to note is that a candidate for the current commissioner's vacancy has been submitted for approval by that person. And I think we're expecting consideration for that person at the September 11th Board of Selectmen and RTM meetings. So hopefully we will reach our full capacity for the first time in some time by the next time we meet. And then moving on, so since our July meeting, there's been an increased interest in FairTV from members of public, press, government, given the decision not to air the Phil Pyle trial on FairTV's education and government access channels. The FairTV Commission email, just for everyone's benefit, is an inbound only email alias. Creates a one-way channel for feedback to be shared with the unelected volunteers on the commission. And each commissioner, I'm sure, has taken their own time to review the correspondence sent to that email alias. And we appreciate feedback from the public during the last month. The commission did respond to a request for comment from a member of the press, a written statement regarding the outcome of our July meeting for clarification. And I will read that statement in its entirety for the benefit of the record. So the FairTV official statement on the Phil Pyle trial coverage dated August 24th, 2023. The FairTV Commission, after thoughtful deliberation, voted 4-0 not to broadcast the upcoming Phil Pyle trial on FairTV. This decision, made during our July 2023 meeting, was based on the determination that the airing of the trial does not conform to the FairTV Commission's code. It was the unanimous decision of the commission that the code, as it is written, was not intended for Fair TV to cover judicial proceedings. To our knowledge, neither Fair TV nor any other education and government access channel in Connecticut has taken on the responsibility of filming a court trial. Our vote is not a judgment on the importance of the trial to town residents. Rather, it is a matter of what our code permits and the intended purpose of Fairfield's education and government access channels. We maintain the view that there are other entities, specifically news organizations, whose missions and responsibilities more appropriately align with the coverage of a trial. End of statement. And a link to that statement has also been posted on the Fair TV website for easy access for anyone who would like to review that. And that's the end of my report, David. If we want to move over to, I guess, Luke for the production manager's report.
Yeah. Hey guys, how we doing? Yeah, just to give a quick recap of what we've been up to on Fair TV's end and my end, I guess, so to speak. I mean, it's been a busy month. Still kind of getting the introduction here. I've been here for 2 months now. Last month I really focused on overhauling the website, totally making it user friendly, changed a bunch of links. This way, everything's a little more easier to read, less cluttered, so to speak. And one of the biggest changes that we made, we linked the YouTube page for the live videos instead of the live feed of the cable, which allows us to provide higher quality video. And it costed us a decent chunk streaming it to the not streaming it to the cable, but to show the live stream on the website. And by just showing the YouTube live, it's saving us about $5,000 to $12,000 a year. And honestly, after looking at the reports and everything, what we are getting on the live stream link for the cable was just spam, and a lot of the people outside the USA that obviously don't care about Fair TV. And that's why I spoke with the commission, and we decided that it's better to provide the link for YouTube Live, because not only is it saving us money, but it's also providing a better quality experience for the end user, as well as being able to access it on tablets, phones, TVs, smart TVs. Whereas the old link that was the cable stream live stream was not very user friendly, and kind of across most platforms didn't really work that well. So so honestly, since we've made that change, we've seen, I mean, a lot more traffic to our YouTube channel, which is good because that gives everyone access to the previous videos, anything that's live, obviously higher quality video. And overall, it's a much better experience. Obviously, we still are broadcasting live meetings and whatnot to the cable channels, but this way, anyone who doesn't have cable or is on the road, doesn't have access to the cable channel, is able to access it on their phone or wherever it may be. So that's for the YouTube, and obviously we are live on YouTube now. That's goes hand in hand. We've been doing it for about a month now, and we've been getting a lot of good feedback from different people across the state, or just Fairfield, I guess, so to speak. And they're saying that it's better quality. They're able to access it easier, and really just a better overall experience for the end user. Let's see. And one other thing I want to touch on, and someone mentioned it in one of the last meetings, is that we are kind of in a transition period with the cameras. The IT department in the town of Fairfield and the Board of Ed, they both received a grant that pays for Zoom rooms to be set up in most of the meeting areas that usually happen. Board of Ed, I'm sure if you saw it last night, you saw there was one camera, not multiple shots, pretty much a wide shot, doesn't give you much. But unfortunately, the Zoom rooms, the contracted company that was hired to do it, they fell short, and the rooms were supposed to be done by now, but obviously they aren't. So we kind of had to use a hybrid and use just one camera that hooked into the half finished system that they set up. So that's why if it might look a little bit different for the next couple of weeks, but after talking with the IT departments and the contracted company, they from my understanding is that they are going to come out next week and in the following week as well, and hopefully finish all of the town hall and the Board of Ed setup. So like I said, that's kind of where we are now. Like I said, it was supposed to be finished months ago, but as things go, it didn't work out. But hopefully in 2 weeks, everything should be operational. If not, some sort of a hybrid where we can at least utilize more cameras because they are mounted to the walls. That's the end result is wall mounted cameras, wall mounted microphones, speakers, and it's supposed to be kind of a press and play. You walk into the room and it kind of sets up the Zoom meeting, and you have the cameras and everything to utilize. So that's kind of where we are on that. So it's kind of a wait and see what they do when the company comes back. But yeah, as far as that, I mean, as far as that goes, I'm pretty much kind of stuck there. So that's all IT departments and between Town of Fairfield and Board of Ed IT department. So there's nothing, we kind of have to wait on them to deal with the company.
Hey, Luke, presuming that these rooms get set up and are functional
Yep.
by the date now promised mid-September, is there like a lapse period where we need to test it and make sure that these work, before we start relying on them to broadcast the meeting? I get worried that, we'll rely on it to broadcast the next Board of Ed meeting.
Yeah, no, of
Something's funny
course.
with
And
it.
that's kind of why we haven't used it yet. So it is,
Mhm.
it's set up, but it's not 100% operational. There are a lot of issues with it. So that's why we don't feel confident to kind of test it, so to speak, on a important meeting that, could kind of, is obviously everyone wants to see it, has an issue, then, we'd rather just go with the one camera setup that's reliable, that we've used in the past, and we know works. But yeah, obviously there will be a period where we're going to test it, make sure that it, stream live works, the cameras work, audio, mics, and all that. So we're not just, going in cold. We want to, definitely going to be a testing period to ensure that it's up to our quality. And I'm sure from the Town of Fairfield IT department and Board of Ed, they wanted to work 100% before they pay them off. So,
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I think just keeping close on that on when, I know it's come up a few times where folks are less pleased, I think, with the current one camera setup. I think for good reason, like understanding why it's set up that way. But we should just stay close to it so we can give
exactly.
a
And
reasonable estimate on when, like, I think it sounds like October meetings will probably return to normal.
yeah, according to them,
Is
like I
that
said,
fair?
yeah, I would say if everything goes according to plan, we could see it end of September. Probably is the soonest that we'd be able to see operational.
Right.
And yeah, it's pretty much all I got. I mean, other than that, just been kind of still cleaning up the mess at Fair TV's office, and kind of getting everything a little more simplified and streamlined.
And we appreciate that, Luke.
Just testing audio here. Am I coming across?
A little bit choppy, but
All right, I'm going to try and minimize my please. Luke, you're doing a fantastic job. We're thrilled that you've joined this committee, and in 2 short months, you've, helped us make a 180 and really just attention to detail, and we're grateful for it.
thank you.
Okay. Anything else with this? I'll take that as a no. At this point, we'll move to new business. want to just quickly mention, and I don't know if it was said before, Will, by you, I'm sorry if I didn't hear correctly, that it appears that there is a prospective commissioner who's very interested in joining. She will come up for consideration. So moving past that to the topic of the fill pile trial coverage, what I'd like to do for the benefit of Paul is give the opportunity to the time in the world, but we're going to go. I'd ask you to keep it to 2 minutes so we can express how they feel. That as the state by the FairTV Commission, we really to all town residents, including ourselves. It's a topic of great to as far as secondary content are concerned. With respect to speakers, with the town attorney, Jim Baldwin, who I've had the good fortune of speaking to solicit his opinion. Will Ferguson and I spoke to Jim. Without any more sort of shaping of Jim's thoughts, I'll turn it over to you, Jim, and ask just that you be conscious of the time so that others can participate as well.
Certainly. Yes, I would. Thank you. And it was my understanding that I was invited by the commission, yourself and Mr. Ferguson, to present tonight, and that's why I'm here. And the primary purpose is because I as you know, I got wind of your July decision and the basis for it, and the statements that are made as just related by Mr. Ferguson are, in fact, in my legal opinion as town attorney, pursuant to the Charter Section 9-3, is that that conclusion that was made by the commission is incorrect. I shared with you and the commission my August 9th, 2023 memorandum, in which I set forth that legal opinion, which is, according to the town charter, binding. That is not to say that, as I say in that opinion, and I hope it's understood by everybody here, that is not to say that you must in any way air or broadcast the fill pile trial or any part of it. To the contrary, it is absolutely within the discretion of this commission to do so, to choose to do so, or to choose not to do so. But the premise upon which that original decision in July was made is absolutely flatly incorrect. And that's the essence of why I guess we're having this conversation, and why I'm here and happy to answer any questions. With that said, I would like to add to my opinion the Town of Fair TV policies, section 3.2 of the programming policy, which states Fair TV will provide direct, nonpartisan information to the citizens of Fairfield concerning the operations and deliberations of the town's government entities and information of general civic importance to the community. Those are the policies that were adopted by this commission many years ago, but to my knowledge are still in play. And that, in concert with my August 9th opinion, stands for the proposition that it is certainly within the discretion of this commission to air the trial or parts of the trial, depending on its resources and depending on whether that's something that you feel that is of important civic, relevancy.
Thank you, Jim. Obviously, that underscored a lot of what you alluded to. I just want to take this moment, as I see hands, who obviously have, history here, being Kathy Braun and Jim Kennelly, both former FairTV commissioners, took the time to make a statement or write a statement, and like you, and obviously have a long history here, specifically with this code. So I would look to one of you, it doesn't matter which one, to give your code.
Can I just chime in here? And I don't mean to sound overbearing or anything, but the charter expressly states that the opinion of the town attorney is to be applied to situations such as this. So this should not be a discussion about the merits of that opinion. I just want to make that clear. I welcome any comments or reasons for not airing the Phil Pyle trial or any portion thereof. That is certainly subject to discussion, and it merits discussion. But I don't want this to be a challenge, respectfully, to those other attorneys who are on the line and prepared to speak. I don't want this to be a challenge to the town charter's section 9.3 provisions.
Well, I would just add, challenged, we are an independent commission. I'm not going to mind. I hear what you're saying, Jim, and experience than I do, but
the foundation of your the foundation of your discussion should be: is this something that the commission wants to air, not whether it is legal or in compliance with your policies and the charter, and more specifically the town code. That's my only point.
But Jim, I just want to, because I know David's coming in a little choppy, I just want to say that part of the discussion was, there was concern on our end whether we were permitted to, and I think, and your opinion has said that the way that the town or that the code is written is that we are certainly permitted to. I think
Correct.
The piece that we voted, the second side of that led to the vote, was that whether the code as it was written ever served the intent to cover. And I think that's where
those are two contrary statements. Those are incompatible statements. The fact of the matter is that you are permitted to do this according to the town code. That should be the premise of this discussion.
Yes, which is that the language is open enough and shows some examples of what would be considered secondary content, and then uses safe words and other, I don't have it directly in front of me, but uses open language to permit anything that is effectively nonpartisan and relevance to town government and education. And I think what we were saying is that the core intent of what FairTV is intended to do, which is the meetings of the 5 boards and town bodies that are explicitly forward, and that the precedent of never covering a trial, and the fact that the trial does not take place in Fairfield, and while it is of certainly interest to members of the town, it is not anything that FairTV would have been set up to cover. And I think that's where, and again, I don't want to spread anyone else in the commission, but I think that was the crux of the debate, and what has come into play. So certainly that it is something that we could do, but could and should, I think, are different things.
Right. But I just want to point out that you are absolutely obligated pursuant to section 22-3 to air the primary content. And certainly this falls under 22-4 of the town code, which is the secondary content, which is very open-ended and liberally interpreted to include something such as this. As I said in my memo, if it can include a parade, then it can certainly include something such as this, which has affected many, many members of this community, if not all the members of the community. But I think I've said my piece, and I hope that the commission appreciates where I'm coming from, and the discussion should be based on whether you think this is worthy of broadcasting any portion thereof. And that is not up to me. That's not my decision. It's no one else's decision but the commission.
Okay, I'm going to, at this point, thank you, Jim. I appreciate your thoughts there. Turn it over to others who've expressed an interest in the interest of time. Kathy, would you like to comment on this? Because I'm not going to tell anybody what they can or cannot say. I know that you're very interested in the matter.
You're muted. You're muted.
Unmute me. There, I'm unmuted now. Okay. I served on the RTM and was a co-sponsor of the FairTV ordinance, which then became codified into the town code, which is the governing document. Any policies or procedures you may have passed since then still must follow the town code. That's your governing document. Also, I served on the FairTV Commission after I was on the RTM, and these types of things came up all the time. In my opinion, every single commission or committee from the beginning till now has had to deal with all kinds of coverage requests. And we have considered expanding secondary content coverage. And we never did because it's extremely difficult, complicated, etc. This commission is not authorized to go beyond what's in the code. If it does, it would be acting outside of its statutory authority. And my belief, especially based on the history and the context of how we came up with the limitation on secondary content, is that you're not authorized to cover non-town items. This is not town government. A state or federal court proceeding is not part of town government, even if it involves public officials. Those public officials are alleged to have not even been acting in the course of their normal duties. I would think that, and I'm talking despite everyone's interest in watching that trial. That has nothing to do with this. You have to be guided by the code and the intent behind the code. So you decide, and I agree with Attorney Baldwin on that. You decide, and you did decide. You made the correct decision that the code does not authorize it. You also made the correct interpretation of the code, and that's also your area. The town has entrusted you to carry out the broadcast system as defined in the code, and you have done so. You have interpreted your powers correctly, and you have also interpreted what the code allows correctly. So just a little bit about why we have limitations on it. Throughout the history, there have been multiple requests, and I can let Jim Kennelly talk about that. I see he's here. It's horribly complex and difficult to figure out. We wanted to keep politics out of it. We wanted to keep undue influence out of it. Campaigns, people were coming up with all kinds of requests throughout the entire history of this channel. There are options, okay? Somebody can get permission and just record it and go put it on YouTube. Also, this commission can seek to modify the ordinance to expand it specifically to allow court cases. That would be a pretty big undertaking, but it could be done. We never did that. It never even came up. But we have considered expanding it. And every time we did, we came up with many issues. We actually got, at one point, a letter from a lawyer saying what we were doing was unconstitutional because we wanted to limit political involvement in special programming that would be covered. So the mission has always been keep politics out of it, keep undue influence out of it, keep the power of the purse or the power of the power structure out of it, keep it clean and pristine to cover town government. Parades, graduations, that's all part of the town. A state or federal court proceeding is not part of the town. It's not controlled by the town. We don't know how long it could last. Somebody would have to decide, are you covering it, soup to nuts, or are you going to cover part of it? And then you have to have criteria for how we're covering part of it so we don't show bias in what we're covering. The budget, I don't think the budget accommodates turning into court TV, because once you cover one, then everybody's going to cover a lot of other things. I personally would like to see land use appeals covered. I'm on the zoning commission, but that's not allowed either. So you can go about and do it, and that would require what we went through. Every time we look to expand it, we come up with many, many issues and roadblocks, and perhaps it could be expanded, but that's another project for another day. Right now, it does not authorize it. You made the right decision. Even now, if I'm not going to comment on what Attorney Baldwin said, but if someone feels like perhaps the town code is ambiguous, and I don't believe it is, well, then you have to look to the intent of the people who drafted it. And you've got two members right here that have said very clearly, we wanted to keep it clean and pristine and not covering anything but the town government. Things related to the operations of the town with public participation and hosted by the town, things like that. So whether you're looking at the legislative history or the plain reading of the code, it's pretty clear that that's what's intended and nothing beyond that. I think that's all I have to say to keep it within 2 minutes. But if you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Catherine. That was very helpful. Members of the commission have a thought here. That at a news organization covered, and I hope you can hear me. If not, Paula, maybe you can pick up. A news organization decided to cover the RTM meeting 2 nights ago. A news organization is a body that is set up to cover things like a trial if they so choose. That's why there was once at one point a court TV. News 12 thought it worthy enough to send a camera reporter to the RTM meeting, and hopefully they will find it within good reason to cover the Phil Pyle trial as a news organization. That would be my wish as a resident here who's keenly interested in this trial, but I do not believe it is the responsibility of the FairTV committee, to cover things outside of these 5 meetings, as Catherine alluded to. Jim.
Yeah, can you hear me
Please.
okay? Am I off mute? Can you
You're
hear me
fine.
okay? All right, I just want to say, Luke, you're doing an amazing job as the guy who hired your predecessor. Great job. Looks terrific. Always wanted to get to YouTube Live and stuff.
Thank you.
Look, to briefly explain, I'm the co-founder of FairTV Education and the founder of FairTV Government. I was the chairman of the ad hoc FairTV committee from the end of 2008 until 2015, until this commission was created by Chapter 22 of the Town Code. Over those years, I served for 2 years as the production manager from 2009 to 2011 before Jerry Spino came in and did that when we were able to go live from various locations and we needed someone who was on site. But I did all the loading and everything else, and also served as chairman of the ad hoc committee. And as has been alluded to by other past committee and committee members in those years, we were bombarded with requests, some innocuous, some pretty openly political. But I really have to take a moment here to address directly what we've heard tonight, because I think the precedent is incredibly dangerous. I wrote Section 22-4 under secondary content, and I will read it again. The FairTV Commission under Section 22.4, the FairTV Commission may authorize additional coverage of Fairfield town government and the Fairfield public schools, herein defined as gavel-to-gavel meetings of town bodies not part of the primary content schedule. And then here's the very troubling part that is now being essentially cracked wide open by the town attorney's opinion. and events related to the town government or the public schools, such as ceremonies, nonpartisan public meetings, parades, and athletic competitions. And since I wrote that, I'd like to explain what the original intent of that was. Now, I don't have a law degree, but I have watched, say, LA Law, and usually when people in a court proceeding yell or try to offer their opinion, the judge bangs his gavel and says, this is a court proceeding, not a public meeting. So I defer to the legal degree that the town attorney has, but I tell you that I think you're doing a very dangerous thing to abide by it and to say that section 22.4 is some open-ended way that you can cover anything you please. That's not what's intended. Now, what was intended in 2015 when this was written and passed by the RTM was that there was a Memorial Day parade. And the view was that that was innocuous and that nobody would ever kind of take covering the Memorial Day parade as some invitation to do something beyond that. Athletic competitions was meant to cover the Turkey Bowl, the football game between Fairfield Ward and Fairfield Ludlow's football teams. Ceremonies were things like graduations. Are these complex state court trials? No. Now, why didn't we include or possible court proceedings? The answer is that we understood that at any one time that the town of Fairfield is involved in a host of legal proceedings. Who would choose which proceedings would be considered? How would we decide? Would the case that maybe was embarrassing to one person in town government be covered? Or would another case that made that person out to look like a hero be covered? That is why the word trial is never in there, besides the fact that it's a state proceeding, not a local town government or local. Now, I also heard that the procedures and policies were changed at some point over the last few years to talk about civic interest. I was at meetings in 2017 when those changes were discussed. And the reason for that was that there was a belief that the in-between boards that go up between meetings could be used more effectively to alert the public to things that might be going on. And was the commission, did it have its hands tied to not allow those boards to put up messages about please be vaccinated or something? And I weighed in at the time that that was reasonable, and some kind of language like that would make sense. But no one thought for a second that that somehow opened the door to what's being described here. I think this is crucial. And I think it's very important to note that as a way to strong arm you into thinking that now section 22.4 is some sort of magic open door to pick whatever you want to cover, that is not the case. Gavel to gavel is the word. Complete, not edited. No edited programming has appeared on FairTV since 2011. None. It has been either the complete program, the complete graduation, the complete parade, if you're going to use those examples, or gavel to gavel meetings. I'm very concerned about this because if you then follow from this precedent that supposedly is being insisted upon, this legal opinion, then you are going to essentially anyone can take 22.4 on secondary content and decide we just feel like it. That is not what was written. That wasn't what the intent was. And I assure you that usually in an opinion, there's some interest in knowing what the original intent was of legislation created. And I didn't see any of that here, nor did I see any evidence at all of examples of where these kinds of entities, education and government access channels, cover things that aren't to do with their local government. They cover state trials. So I urge you, please, 22.4 is not open-ended. It is very clear and distinct. I often grit my teeth over the fact that we left in the parades and the athletic competition and the ceremonies. We did it because we hoped at least that no one would ever be enterprising enough to think that that was the way you were going to be able to find a way to get FairTV to cover something that is a state and or some other kind of proceeding that clearly is not covered by this. So I would urge you, essentially your job is to be the watchman on the walls. As long as Fair TV follows, and the commissioners on it follow this, strictly follow this, these ordinances, and don't look for an invitation to invite the whirlwind. I assure you, when I was chairman, I had members of the RTM who told me they'd be happy to fund me for Fair TV if they could have a show. I had members of the state legislature telling me that they really deserved a show because they had been such great supporters. That is not the door you want to open, as innocuous as this seems to be. Oh, gee, isn't this important and whatnot? But I would say to you, as the person who wrote it, who got it through the RTM, that no one thought covering the Memorial Day parade, high school graduations, or the Turkey Bowl meant that Fair TV somehow had the carte blanche to start covering gavel to gavel state criminal trials.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jim. I appreciate that. My
Can I
apologies.
respond? Can I respond to that?
If I can respond to that response.
Certainly, and I would encourage if the public would like to speak, I see a handful of others. Please raise your hand so I know I can call on you. But Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond because from a legal perspective, and I appreciate what Mr. Kennelly said, but legally the language is quite clear, and it was he read that first part of the ordinance, but failed to note the comma after the first part about gavel to gavel, which is followed by and events related to town government, public schools such as ceremonies, nonpartisan public meetings, parades, and athletic competitions, such as has a huge significance in the interpretation of this ordinance, insofar as I stated in my memo to this commission, it is not the entire universe of all possibilities. It is subject to those things which are nonpartisan and have some relevance to town government. Those are the two criteria. And I can't emphasize enough the fact that the secondary content, as long as it meets those two requirements, and certainly a trial, everyone's politicizing this trial for some reason. I can't imagine why it's being politicized, because a trial by its very nature is nonpartisan. I mean, that's the nature and the foundation of our justice system. So it is simply abhorrent to any logical legislative reading of the ordinance. It's very simple, and I'm not advocating to this commission. I want you to understand clearly, I am not advocating to this commission to broadcast this. What I am advocating is that, contrary to those opinions which have been expressed, to my contrary opinion, it is absolutely within the discretion of this commission. And I don't mean to sound heavy-handed, but that is pursuant to 9-3 of the town charter, which puts in my hands the interpretation of the power and the authority of boards and commissions such as yours. That is my only point. I'm not going to get into a legal argument over this, because I'm extremely confident in my analysis. So I think that all these statements that I've heard have been attacking that legal opinion. And what I urge this commission to do is to take that away in your deliberations as to whether or not you want to cover this, and just consider whether or not it's something that you do want to cover, because it's within your discretion as secondary content.
Thanks, Jim. I think we've got some connectivity issues with some of the other commissioners. I know Karen, and I also see you, Kathy, but Karen, I know you've had your hand up for a bit. Give you an opportunity to chime in here.
Yes, thank you. My name is Karen McCormick. I am a member of the RTM, but here sort of, excuse me, my dog is now deciding to bark, but Grau. I'm here as a citizen of Fairfield and speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of any of the people that I might represent. I cannot for the life of me understand how it is that we're conducting this meeting, first of all, and offering an opportunity for citizens to sort of counter the town attorney without really calling it public comment. I mean, I heard the town attorney offer an opinion in his capacity as the town attorney, and then I heard the chair of this commission basically give an opportunity to Kathy Braun to sort of counter that opinion, not as a member of the general public, but just because she's an interested person. So I also thought the public comment was limited to 2 minutes each, and certainly some people that have spoken here that are not the town attorney have gone on for more than 2 minutes. So I too have read the town code, and well, I think it's very easy for people to come in now and say, well, I was a member of this commission and this is what I personally intended. The fact is that the code speaks for itself. The words are very, very clear. They say that this commission, and this is really, I concur with the opinion of the town attorney in that the real question here is, does the commission want to cover this is really the issue before the commission today. There needs to be a presumption that there is authority under the town code to cover the trial. If in fact the commission chooses to cover the trial, there is authority there to do that. And anyone to suggest otherwise, quite frankly, is interpreting the code in a way that they want to interpret it, not based upon what's written in the words. It says specifically that secondary content includes all those things that are listed and events related to town government. I mean, how is this not an event related to town government? It involves a trial for unprecedented acts of crimes that have been committed against the taxpayers of Fairfield. We are not talking about a politician or somebody elected official trying to compete to have some kind of airtime. We're talking about the town of Fairfield taxpayers having an opportunity to see firsthand the testimony of the people involved in the trial that will talk about why it is and how it is we got to where we are. I don't understand how this is politicized. I have no idea how it's politicized and why it's politicized. The fact of the matter is that there is no media coverage in our area. In fact, there may not be any real media coverage in the entire country. We can't get media coverage. The News 12 is not going to show this trial. And if the commission believes that this is something that they should cover, then they should do it. But to get on here and argue that that the commission is not authorized under the town code to cover this, to me is wrong. And I would strongly encourage you to disregard that. And I also take issue with the fact that the commission made a determination already that they wouldn't cover it based upon opinions that were offered that they couldn't cover it. So that to me, you know, we're at the starting block already, basically suggesting that there's no authority there. And I think that the town attorney's opinion should be at least followed for purposes of determining whether there's authority there. And ultimately, it's up to you as the commission members to determine whether or not this should happen. This is not going to happen every week, every month. We're not going to have, hopefully, trials where we're facing millions and millions of dollars in taxpayer expenses being incurred. And this hopefully will be a once in a lifetime thing. So I don't really have much more to say other than to say that you are under what I can see is the town code. You are authorized to allow this to be covered. It's up to you whether or not you believe that that's something that should be covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm not sure if we got David back or not hearing him. But I see Elizabeth, I see you've got a hand up there. Give you a chance.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Zazima. My Fairfield address is 160 Fairfield Woods Road, Unit 22. And like Representative McCormick, I'm a member of the RTM. I too am here as a citizen and I do not represent any of my constituents. You know, it's duly noted there's an admonition on the table not to challenge the town attorney's opinion. So I do have other issues that I brought forth in an email to the commission, and which I would hope or believe that everyone has had a chance to see. And I think there are some other really compelling issues that are not being, I don't think I've heard them discussed or addressed, and so I would just like to call attention to those. Number one, I have not heard an estimate of what this would cost. And if that number has not been brought forth, I think it would be worthwhile to give taxpayers an idea of what that might be. And in that same vein, it's alleged that somebody said, well, we'll find the money. Well, according to the charter, there is a very specific process by which monies are to be transferred for any expenditure that is not already in that department's budget. No money can either be promised or allocated unless that process has been successfully completed, which is to request a transfer from the Board of Finance. The other issue I know has come up is the possible condition of the equipment, and that has been brought up in the context of covering meetings, which is the mission of FairTV. So I don't know whether we're talking physically dragging equipment back and forth to Bridgeport, what that would do to the equipment, and whether it could actually sustain, a process like that. My other concern is, what would this mission cause FairTV to be unable to do exactly what they are bound by the town code to be doing. So in other words, that is their primary activity, and would taking on a special activity, even if we all agreed the town code allowed it, would that in fact mean that they would be unable to fulfill those obligations? I too do not have a political angle on this. I think it's great that the town is reminded of what happened. We have a frightening lack of financial controls in place right now. It would be a great reminder to people of what can happen when we fail to meet those minimal obligations to protect the town. So I have no problem with this subject being brought up at this juncture. I just think that, number one, without respect to the code, the violation of the code, these other considerations are extremely important, and I haven't heard any satisfactory discussion or answers on how they would be overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. If I may, I endorse what she said, except for the last part, which is a commentary. But yeah, that's where the focus of this commission should be tonight. That is, it should be on those issues that Ms. Zesma just raised. That's absolutely what this discussion should be about. And I regret that we haven't gotten there yet, or you haven't gotten there yet, to be more precise.
Thank you both. I just want to do a check here since I know we've got some connection issues, it seems. Paul, do we still have you on?
Can you hear me? I'm
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just unmuted myself. I'm dialed in.
Great. And then, Dave, you still on with us here? I have to imagine yes as the host, but maybe some mic issues. All right. Try to get it resolved. Jim Kay, I see you. You're up there. You'd like to make a statement?
Yeah, I just, again, once you start, the goal here is to move you to negotiating. When you say, well, we don't have, we could estimate it'll be $20,000, then the administration can come back with, well, here's $20,000. If you say, I don't have the personnel, the administration can come back with, you know what? Here's 2 people we can hire for you. You go down the primrose path. Now, again, I'm going to hammer this point home, and it is, why didn't we write when we got to that comma that Mr. Baldwin was talking about, why didn't we say that and events related to town government or the public schools, such as ceremonies, nonpartisan public meetings, parades, and athletic competitions? Why didn't we also say and state court proceedings? The reason was because no one thought that those were town related events, not related in the sense that they were of the town. Does that mean that we didn't know that there were court cases? I was on the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We have huge land use issue cases that there was great interest in, especially around issues related to 830G and issues of affordable housing that brought out huge crowds to those meetings. So if the intent was, look at the language, because I will say this, if you accept the town attorney's legal opinion, which seems to be basically a question of reading comprehension here, you're just in negotiations. Because obviously I've already talked about the fact that it's supposed to be gavel to gavel or complete. There has not been any edited content on these two channels in 12 years. So if what you're going to be asked to do if you go along with the town attorney, and he doesn't want to be heavy-handed or talk about the town charter, but he wants you to move to his position and the administration's position, which is you better start negotiating. Once you come off of the fact that it doesn't say state court proceedings in 22.4, that's when the negotiation begins. That's when we see how much money do you need? How many people do you need? What's most troubling about this is the fact that it's pretty clear if you listen to Luke, the future is things like YouTube. And there's little doubt that if the administration is that concerned about this, or members of the public or RTM are concerned about this, they could go right ahead, set up a free YouTube channel, march down to the court, and cover as much of these proceedings as they felt. They'd be under no obligation to do it gavel to gavel or complete, which you are under the obligation to do, even in section 22.4. Gavel to gavel, complete, not edited. You will break a huge precedent if you put edited content, incomplete content. I assure you that while I was a member of the committee, when Board of Education meetings had technical problems when our recording, that people who were upset that the meeting was not completely covered complained and howled about the fact that we did not present the complete meeting. And that was a critical part of eventual legislation that created chapter 22, sections 1 through whatever that covers FairTV. So keep in mind here, you will likely have to be able to cover the entirety of this trial if you are not to break a 12-year-old precedent of presenting less than complete content. And once you accept this, once you go down this path of that somewhere it says that that events related to town government and the public schools like ceremonies, graduations, nonpartisan public meetings, parades, and athletic competitions are the coverage of state legal proceedings. Once you've said that's okay, that's in there, we don't see it, but hey, graduation ceremonies and parades are the same thing as state court proceedings. Now the only issue, once you accept that, your only negotiation is, well, how much will it cost? What will we have to bring down? And I would say to you that when you break that, last thing, if you break that precedent, when there are lower costs in terms of the impact of FairTV's, what Kathy described as its pristine coverage of local government, when you break that, what you're going to have to ask yourself is, could the administration send a staffer or one of these concerned citizens to go down there with their iPhone, flip on their YouTube app, and live cast this or record it every day? They could. They could do it very easily. It wouldn't require you to take money from secondary programming.
Now, that's flat out wrong. You cannot do something like that in a court of law without the court's permission.
You'd have to ask for the court's permission.
And the judge in this instance gave permission to this
I didn't mention that. My apologies.
Yes. And I take offense to the notion that this is just a matter of linguistics or interpretation. To the contrary, I'm an attorney. And quite frankly, I'm offended by the notion that the language, which is plain in its face, which means that this is not the universe of possibilities. These are examples. And I'm sorry that we're spiraling into this debate over something which should be, according to the town charter, unnecessary. And I'm going to leave it there. But this whole debate, if this commission is going to go anywhere further with this discussion, I urge you to discuss those matters which Ms. Zesma raised about the cost and whether
I'm going to
resources.
speak to two of them. I'm going to speak to two of them, Jim. Thanks very much. And I appreciate this spirited discussion. And I'm sorry to all for my connection issues. Elizabeth, you brought up a couple points. Let me clarify a few facts here, because I noticed that there is a penchant sometimes to, tell the media what's going on. And, I find that a little bizarre when there's a lot of misinformation. At a meeting that Paula Kokoza and I attended in May in the town's offices, we were told explicitly, and Paula is my witness to this in case anybody doubts this, that if we wanted to cover this, if we decided to cover this, the town would find money. I am not using those terms loosely, okay? We have a budget that has been allocated for the filming of these meetings, of which there had been a rapid increase of over the last month. That budget needs to be left intact to fulfill our mission. We have equipment that has not been delivered, and that could result in further expenses. So under no uncertain terms do we have, or would we allocate our own budget toward the request of an entity who wants us to film secondary content. The town said, the human resources director, administrator, we will find the money for this if need be. I haven't been around long enough to know the ramifications of that, but I'm going to take that as chapter and verse and, go by that authority as far as the budget impact of this. To your other question, Elizabeth, about the mechanisms of filming this, this would require an individual to be hired to monitor filming equipment for anywhere from 2 weeks to multiple months. We don't know how long it is. We have no idea what the cost would be if the trial extended beyond a reasonable time. We don't know, candidly, if somebody has the flexibility in their employment schedule to accommodate that request, but we do know that it would be a very expensive operation. We don't have those numbers because we feel we have a very clear mandate not to film this. And I'd like to bring, actually, speaking of mandates about filming this, I'd like to bring up a final example. Today, a request was made, not of the commission, but of the FairTV manager. A request was made to see if we would film a meeting relating to the Rooster River flooding, where the first select woman will be joined by some town officials, and they will sit on the stage along with State Rep. Kristen McCarthy-Vahey. Another request was made in the same overall request that the town inauguration should be covered as well. I'm not sure why those requests didn't come through the commission itself. I'll take the person at their word who requested it, that maybe they didn't know the procedure. But already what I see here is that people are going to stretch this boundary of what we can cover to a broad spectrum of things. And as Catherine Braun eloquently put it, there are other town meetings that already are not recorded. And what is to say that we are going to start determining which town meetings now take precedence over others, and for that matter, which judicial proceedings take precedence over others? We know that there is tremendous interest in this trial. We also believe that if people want to see the trial, they can petition news organizations, they can drive and attend the trial themselves, assuming they're able to drive, or they can try and arrange other transportation. But we don't look at it as our inherent duty to, be a broadcaster of live court TV proceedings. That is not something that I have ever heard of. And furthermore, we have never heard of a Connecticut town and their educational or government channels providing that service. And while this trial may have an extraordinary feel to it, we don't feel we can just flip on a switch and say, this blows out everything else, and we're now going to commit a tremendous amount of unpredictable time and resources to do it. So I hope I've covered some of your questions there, Elizabeth, because I thought they were very good questions. And even though they're not, part of our active conversations for this meeting, these are facts about what has occurred in the past. I'll turn it over to anybody else from the public now. I'd ask if there's anybody else who hasn't spoken, because we are coming up on over 1 hour here, and I think it's important that we, start to wrap up public comments on this matter. Kathy, I'll just ask you to be brief here and
Very brief.
deference to
A couple points I
others.
forgot to mention before because I was in a hurry to stay within 2 minutes. There are multiple places elsewhere in the code where they talk about what the authority is. And I think if you look at the code as a whole, the intent behind it will lead you to what the restriction really is. And I'm looking at 22-5, primary must be fully assigned and funded before you can do any secondary, and that the commission shall not authorize the production of any other content or accept outside produced content for broadcast. 22-10, commission jurisdiction. Commission shall oversee the operations of the broadcast system for the express purpose of recording, producing, editing, live broadcast, rebroadcast, and internet streaming of the town of Fairfield education and government meetings. The commission shall serve as the sole policymaking authority regarding broadcast content acting strictly within the broadcast standards. 22-12, powers and duties. The commission shall oversee the broadcast system and shall adopt procedures and policies that shall deliver broadcast content of the legislative, educational, executive, financial, and land use meetings of the town of Fairfield. All of those combined with what you know of the legislative history and the context of why we restricted it, and even the category of illustrative examples for secondary content, not one of those has anything to do with a state or federal court proceeding, which is not town government. People that act outside of their duties and commit crimes, that happens all the time, not part of town government. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Does anybody else wish to add a final comment? Any of the commissioners?
I mean, David, the only thing that I would say is just, and this is Will, the consideration of covering things in their entirety and intent behind the language gavel to gavel. And I know that.
Yeah, that is not applicable to this section of the town code. I want to emphasize that. The gavel to gavel is the first phrase of that sentence, and the second sentence is comma and such as. And there is a significance to that. Legally, there is a significance. It's not mandated to be gavel to gavel for those things. I just want to emphasize that. And I'm disheartened. I have to say that I'm disheartened that this commission is not discussing the merits of the broadcast, which is its responsibility, but rather it's discussing whether or not my opinion is accurate. And I think I've already addressed that, so I'll let that be.
I just want to say, like, I'm not
say to you that
with an opinion.
It's pretty straightforward. There has not been a piece of edited content. There has not been a piece of non-gavel to gavel or completed. That includes the parades, the ceremonies, the games in 12 years on this channel, of these two channels, not one.
Lee, please. You're on mute, Lee. You have to hit #6 on your phone, or *6. Lee, try *6. I have the same issue.
Does that work? Now can you hear me, David?
Have him turn his computer off.
Yep. I'll try now.
Good.
Can you hear me now, David?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to address the issue of the practicality of gavel to gavel coverage, and that, in my view, we have no practical choice not to cover it gavel to gavel, because the minute you miss something that somebody thinks is important, you're automatically accused of editorial control, regardless of what the reason is that you missed it. And so we have to backstop. We would have to backstop and have people available for every single day without turning the cameras off. And as Will pointed out, or I think Will pointed out, that we have no idea how long this trial could last. It can be very expensive. And I just think that the notion that we could pick and choose which days we cover the trial is a non-starter.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, and Jim, I'm by no means am I trying to argue with your opinion. I certainly am not credentialed to do that. But that's exactly the road I'm trying to go down here, is for us to do this in an unbiased and, dutiful way. We should cover it. Anything we cover, we should cover in its entirety. And, my concern is then, what is our obligation to cover things like appeals? Presuming that if someone is convicted, they may appeal the decision. Are we also on board then to cover any sort of ripple effect beyond this? And that's either an illegal opinion or just our obligation as a commission to cover things in their entirety,
if you're
to ensure that we're not doing anything partisan.
If you're asking for my legal opinion, it's within your discretion not to cover it gavel to gavel. But if it is also within the commission's discretion to consider that something which is not what you want to do. So I know that that's kind of splitting hairs, but the discretion is yours as to whether you want to. It is a possibility, but whether that's something this commission wants to do, that is up to the commission.
And I just think here, having worked in television for 25 plus years now, I might be cheating a little bit on the low end. This is not what guides me. I'm very personally interested in this trial, but as Lee pointed out, this is a mammoth undertaking. As our production manager pointed out very appropriately, we are trying to get our blocking and tackling, to borrow a football term, down on getting cameras, set up properly for our meetings. We're reliant on the town's IT department. We get plenty of comments about people struggling to see who's speaking and hearing and whatnot. And, we're getting requests already, even as of today, to cover things like inaugurations and to cover other meetings. For us to take our eye off the ball, which is what will happen here, and try to, take on something that's, even Court TV determined an entity set up solely for the purpose of this. I personally believe, as not only the chairman of the commission, but as a commissioner and somebody with a vested interest and knowledge, that this is going to distract from our core mission as it is written here. And maybe people will say, this is important and, you have to try, but we know the realities of this. And, at first and foremost, we see it as an issue with what our permissions, grant us. And Jim Baldwin, that is not to be construed as a challenging of your opinion. I guess we can wordsmith it any way we want, but I mean, that we're not actively challenging your opinion. We just see it differently. But if we are going to get into the backstop matters here, to do this is going to require an extensive focus that's going to remove our focus from the very content that we have a mandate to produce. And I would add, as I said it before, we have continuously seen an uptick in other meetings, namely Board of Ed meetings with all the recent activity going on there, and other meetings that we have to figure out how to be resourced to cover, both from a budget and a people standpoint. And obviously those two often work hand in hand. So I think it is really important to know that the realities of doing this are not just simply, send somebody down, tell them it could be a month or 2 months of work, and then boom, snap your fingers and it's done. It's not like that at all. And I think, to echo Lee's point, we would be making a big mistake by not having a comprehensive plan to do this. Gavel to gavel. Anyway, that comments. If there's no other comments, I'm going to conclude this meeting, adjourn this meeting, I should say.
I'll second that
Okay.
motion.
I motion to adjourn the special meeting of the FairTV Commission here on August 30th, 2023.
I second it.
Thank you all for listening in and for your commentary. It's greatly appreciated, and we've tried to at least create a forum where people can exchange views, and that's why we did it this way. And at this point, we have nothing further to add. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you.